Welcome to our program, Effective Manager. My name is CPA Dr. David Muturi, and our conversation today is going to be around negotiation skills. Now, one of the things that we consistently have to do in our working life is to negotiate, and not just working life, but actually in our every day-to-day life, we are confronted with many situations where we need to engage our negotiations. And therefore today would want to explore some of the basic skills that you can use to enable you to effectively negotiate. Now, we're not talking about those high-level negotiations, but you're talking about the day-to-day operations of a manager or a leader who will have to negotiate small retrobit operational issues that will enable them to achieve their organizational objectives. Now, oftentimes you'll find that there are people who would avoid any situations or any circumstances that are not present. But the truth of the matter is that when you take a position of leadership, there will be times when you have to confront situations that may not be very present, or oftentimes you'll find circumstances where you'll have to argue your case out. So when you negotiate, or when there's a need to negotiate, you do well to remind yourself that you are helping to build better relationship with the person that you're negotiating with. You want to build a sustainable relationship into the future by sorting out whatever retro differences that there might be. It serves well to remember that the reason why you're engaged in the negotiation is so that you can be able to deliver a lasting solution that meets the needs of either party, rather than poor short-term solutions that do not meet these needs. And this quite arises if you're, say, a departmental or a sectional head, and you'll have to negotiate with your counterpart, either for resources or for time or whatever else that might be at hand. You also may need to negotiate with the people that you're supervising, or you may have to negotiate with the person who is supervising you, so that you can be able to deliver that lasting solution that will meet the needs of both parties, so that you do not keep on getting into conflict every so often. When you want to be a good negotiator, there are several skills that you do well to cultivate. When you're a good negotiator, the first skill that you cultivate is being flexible. Flexible to mean that you're open-minded and you do not approach the negotiations with a fixed mind or a fixed way of doing something. It does not help the negotiation if you approach the negotiation with only one solution or one way to go in your mind. It helps a lot when you go into negotiations with a very flexible mind, knowing that the reason why there might be the conflict or even the very need for negotiation might just be a basic understanding or inadequate information on either of the party. And therefore you find that in the face of adequate information, then what you may have fixed in your mind may be quite contrary to what might be the solution at hand. So it helps, and it goes a long way when you approach negotiations with a flexible mind. Now, the other important skill that you cultivate that will help you to improve your negotiation skill is creativity. Now, creativity here to mean that you're able to view you're able to bring on board different possibilities of the solutions. You're able to allow your mind to look at the various alternatives that may be there, and even if they may not have been applied in the past, in the circumstances, and as well for you to allow yourself to be creative and to be able to see things beyond what they normally are. The other important skill that would help in your negotiation skill is when you create self-awareness and also aware of other people, being able to read signs, being able to read the body language of that other person that you're negotiating with, being able to understand yourself, to understand how you feel at that particular moment, and how important that decision or the issue at hand is to you, and how important it is to that other person. Because when you understand the level of importance and the level of depth the issue at hand has to the other party and also to yourself, then you're able to balance yourself effectively so that you do not become emotional, or your expectations are not too high, or your expectations are not too low. The other important skill that would help you become a better negotiator is when you do good planning. And good planning here, it means that number one, you research, you take time to find out as much information about the issue at hand as much as is possible. You also take time to understand and to research that other person's needs or requirements, or where they might be coming from. So you plan the negotiations based on availability of information. So it does well when you have as much information as possible, because when you have the information, then you're going to be able to plan how the negotiation should go. The other important skill to have, and actually the other important attribute to have, I would call it an attribute, is honesty. That is, you approach the negotiation table, you approach the negotiation with honesty. That is, you do not have cards that you have hidden under the table only for you to upstage your counterpart at a later point in time. And this is particularly important when it is a working environment where you're going to continue working with the person that you're negotiating with. Now, if you negotiate from a dishonest point of view, of course it will be just a question of time. Even if you win this time around, and I put win in quotes because that would not be a win, because it will be driven by dishonesty, the other party will have seen, or will ultimately see, the dishonest cards that you had under your table. And what will happen is that in future, they will not trust you. In future, whenever you get into any kind of conversations and negotiations about a particular issue, then they are likely also to have cards hidden under the table. And this is, you'll find in most organizations, is what drives a lot of infighting, a lot of underground dealings and underhand dealings between counterparts who should otherwise trust each other and who should be straight with each other. It is because at one point or another, one of the parties could have approached the negotiation table with some cards that were hidden, and therefore they'll never be trusted by their counterpart. The other important attribute or skill or attitude to bring onto the negotiation table is a win-win orientation. That is where you are seeking a solution, like we said, that is going to enable a harmonious working relationship, where each party will feel that they have been able to take something out of the negotiation table. But if you approach the negotiation table all the time with a win-lose orientation, is that one, you'll find that the other parties then will come with the same attitude, and they become very, very difficult to resolve issues. And in organizations, you'll see in some cases a small matter that can be fairly sorted out quite fast between two persons, between two heads of department, between two sectional heads, stretching on and on and on and on and on, simply because the attitude or the orientation of the parties involved is a win-lose attitude. And you find that this will only waste time. It will only create unnecessary animosity, as opposed to when the orientation or the attitude is win-win, looking for the best possible solution that will enable each party to leave the negotiation table satisfied. Now, the other important skill to bring onto the negotiation table is good communication. When you're a good negotiator, you're a good communicator. And this, we're saying, is not just the words that you use, but also the tone and the body language that you use. In fact, the entry behavior at the beginning of the negotiation is usually very important, because it sets the tone. Even before you have said a word, your body language is very, very effective in communicating your attitude and your approach to the negotiation. And therefore, it is very important to be very particular about the communication, the body language particularly, the entry behavior into the negotiation, because it is going to determine the direction that the negotiations will go. You can come in with a certain tone that will put off your counterpart, and you'll find that when you have put them off with that tone, it is going to be very difficult then to be able to arrive at an amicable agreement. You could put them off with the body language. The same case, you could be put off by the body language, you could be put off by the tone, and therefore the entry behavior in every kind of negotiation is very, very important. Now, effective negotiators will not come into the negotiation and confuse the negotiation with confrontation. More often than not, you'll get to listen, say in organization, to people negotiating about an issue, and you can almost feel the kind of tension and the kind of confrontation that you get. And this might be simple issue here as to where one party will sit and the other party will sit. We said we are not talking about very complicated negotiations, we're talking about the day-to-day issues of the day. So there's some people who will approach negotiations as if it is a confrontation. Now, when you do that, it'll mean that the other person is going to be on their defensive, because you have approached it as a confrontation, and when the other person goes on their defensive, then that becomes a locked situation. So it helps when you approach negotiation not as a confrontation, but to ensure that you remain as calm and professional and patient as possible. Effective negotiators also do not become emotional, like I said. They stick to the issues, and they do not make it personal, and they avoid as much as possible becoming angry, hostile, or frustrated. Now, when you're negotiating an issue at work, you may want to ask yourself, why would you want to make it emotional? Why would you want to make it personal? Why would you want to become angry or very hostile or frustrated? It helps when you're professional, you remain calm and you stick to the issue. Of course, I'm sure you could have witnessed a situation where an otherwise simple matter that could have been sorted out in a very fast and easy manner could have been destroyed, or the negotiations or the discussions could have been destroyed by either a person becoming personal, that is attacking the counterpart at a personal level rather than sticking to the issue. And you see, this could be by way of the language that the person is using, or even the body language being disrespectful in the process of the negotiation. It helps when you remain impersonal and you stick to the issue. Now, if you're to get angry, or you feeling like you're getting hostile or frustrated, it always helps to take a break, to take a deep breath and ask yourself, why is it that I would want to become emotional or angry on this particular issue? Is it that I have a personal interest, or is it the interest that is here is beyond what I'm putting down on the negotiation table? So it helps to remain professional and to remain impersonal and to avoid becoming angry, hostile, or frustrated. It is also important in negotiation to not blame the other party if you cannot achieve what you have desired or the outcome that you wanted. It is not uncommon to hear somebody wanting to apportion the blame to the other party, particularly when they cannot be able to achieve the desired outcome. Say one departmental head blaming the other as for not being able to achieve whatever it is that they required as their inhibition. Now, a good negotiator does not attempt to apportion blame when they are not able to achieve whatever it is that they have been able to, they had set forth to achieve. Indeed, what good negotiators do is that they are very clear about what they are offering and what they need from the other party. Now, when you're clear what you are offering yourself and what you need from the other party, you find that you avoid a lot of issues and challenges in the negotiation process, because in your mind, you are clear what you're offering. And in your mind, you're clear what you need from the other party. Now, when you're not clear what you're offering, you're likely to become emotional. You're likely to become personal. You're likely to become angry and hostile because you do not have clarity in terms of what you're offering. And the same, when you're not very clear about exactly what you need from the other party. Now, when you have a win-win orientation, you are clear about what you're offering and you're clear about what you need from the other party. Now, when you're a good negotiator, you also come to the table prepared. You think about what the other party needs from the deal. You take a comprehensive view of the situation because you have been able to prepare yourself effectively. Now, when you've prepared, like I had stated earlier, you have researched, you have your facts right. And therefore, when you have your facts right, you know the point of departure and you know the point of convergence with your counterpart. And therefore, when you're clear about the point of departure and the point of convergence, then you do not waste time on the point of convergence, but then you focus on the point of departure. And the point of departure, you find or you are able to point out exactly what the points of departure are, and therefore you are able to see how you can be able to draw back together so that you can be able to arrive at a mutually agreeable decision. Now, when you're a good negotiator, you're also consistent with how you present your goals, your expectations, and your objectives. Because again, like we have said, you have prepared. Then, when you have prepared, you have clearly set out your goals. You have clearly set out your expectations, and you have clearly set out your objectives. So even your counterpart can easily understand where you're coming from, and therefore whatever concessions that there might be to necessary for both parties, they are easier because you can be able to see where each of the party is coming from and where each of the party is headed to. Again, when you're prepared and you're a good negotiator, you're able to set the guidelines for discussion and ensure that you and the other party stick to them throughout the entire process. Now, when you go to a negotiation table without clear set guidelines, you find that there are some negotiators or there are some people who find it very easy to get away with a shouting match. And the moment it becomes a shouting match, you'll find that number one, a decision would not be arrived at, and possibly that is what the other party wanted. That is, a decision is not going to be arrived at because they want to convert it into a shouting match. and therefore the end of the conversation is not going to be conclusive, and therefore the situation will continue as it is. So when you're negotiating and you have done your research, you set the guidelines for the discussions, and once you set the guidelines for the discussions, you ensure that you and the other party stick to them throughout the entire process. And when they stick to them throughout the entire process, at the end of the process, you agree that you have either agreed or disagreed. It is not going to be end up as a shouting match where no conclusion has been made. Like I said, there are some negotiators, there are some persons who will be very keen on getting into those conversations, those negotiations without very clear set guidelines. So at the moment they see that they are not getting what they thought they should get, then they let the conversation degenerate into a shouting match, and therefore the status quo will prevail, and no conclusion will be arrived at. So what have we said? We are saying effective negotiators use effective communication skills, including positive body language. Indeed, in any negotiations, the body language is very important. The entry behavior, because you're saying the entry behavior, the way you walk into the room, the way you sit on the negotiation table, the way the gestures that you make, the tone that you adopt will be more powerful than the words that you use. And therefore it is important when you're involved in negotiation to mind your body language, and also to be keen on the body language of the other party. We have also said that effective negotiators prepare for compromise. You do not get into the negotiation table with a single mind, that it is either your way or no way at all. You prepare for compromise. That is, you're willing not to have everything that you may possibly have demanded or requested, but you're willing to arrive at a compromise. We have said when you're a good negotiator, you strive for a mutually beneficial solution. Now, when the solution is not mutually beneficial, you find that you may win on that particular incident or that particular day, but that just arrive in the big fight, because the other party, if they feel that the solution that was arrived at was not beneficial or was not mutually beneficial, they'll of course raise that matter time and again, and therefore you may not. It is not a celebrating moment when the solution or what you have arrived at, the decision that you have arrived at, is not felt as mutually beneficial. Now, when you're a good negotiator also, you ask plenty of questions. And in the process of the negotiation, you'll ask questions, and this is one of the ways that you'll be able to establish as to whether the conclusion that you're arriving or what you're suggesting is mutually beneficial, because of the questions that you have asked. When you're a good negotiator, you also pay attention to detail. You pay attention to the details of whatever conclusion that you have arrived at, because like they say, the devil is in the details. You may feel like you have been able to achieve what you sought out to achieve, but there might be one small detail or one other small detail here and there that you could have left out that could be twisting the whole decision or the whole solution entirely to a different direction. And finally, when you are a good negotiator, you endeavor to put things in writing. Whatever decision that has been arrived at, it is always important to put it in writing so that it can always be referred to in future in case of any misunderstanding. And therefore, when it is recorded and preferably signed by the parties involved, then it helps quite a lot in case of a further disagreement in future. So we've said negotiations are a part of life. They're part of every day-to-day operations, and you have to be ready as a leader, as a manager, to negotiate every day, even if the job does not specifically point out negotiation as one of the key deliverables. When you sit in a position of leadership, there is going to be a lot of negotiation every so often, and therefore it helps to prepare and to be aware about the skills and the approaches that you use when you're on the negotiation table. Thank you very much, and see you next time.